I felt so terrible when Carrie died. Trying to explain the feeling I had is like trying to describe what you see when your eyes are bandaged. It's not impossible, but it's different from describing something you can actually look at, something you might see in the course of a normal day. It is trying to describe something at which you are unable to look directly. She never wrote to me as often as Lance did. It was usually him writing the letters and signing on behalf of them both. They played as a team, L and C, two capital initials with a plus sign in between. In the margins of their letters, sometimes, or after the sign-off, she would also write something, or if somehow Lance had been sidelined. One July, when his family took him down to Branson on vacation, for example, that was the week when Carrie sent in a turn so there'd be news for Lance when he came home. L is on vacation, so I thought if I make a move and it's good, he will be excited when he comes home. So here it is. I know all turns are final, but please don't let me do something stupid. We have so much fun together, she wrote. She had decided to have the two of them hide behind a dumpster until the sun went down, because it was hot in the town through which they were passing, and the mutants, who had overrun the town, were carnivorous and could smell less keenly once the air got cool. This might be a good time to mention, they're playing a game that you play by mail. There are no actual mutants in the text. But the game is called Trace Italian. It was designed by the narrator, and it involves trying to find sanctuary in Kansas in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I sent her a little note in reply. It was both sweet and painful to me to think of how much Lance and Carrie meant to each other, how their lives seemed almost made for each other. When I was in high school, I'd only ever had two girlfriends, one for almost no time at all, 2 weeks, early in freshman year, at the way station between junior high and the new social order being established at the high school. And Kimmy, for even less time than that, really just an unsure day or two right before the accident. Technically, I guess, she had still been my girlfriend when she visited me in my bandages at the hospital, but those visits were of a different order. I understood a little about how good it must feel to have someone who loves you out there in the wilds of high school. For a few days, I'd known what that was like too. But what Kimmy meant to me in the aftermath was something different and higher, a singular thing in the world, with no readily available points of comparison. She was just 16, but she had the stomach to stand near a smoking wreck. On the Xeroxed move I took from the file cabinet, I wrote, "Good work to both of you, Carrie. It's safe behind the dumpster. Tell Lance when he gets home that you kept him from harm." I remember feeling a little guilty because, while it's possible to make a move that kills off your character within the game, it's almost never possible to walk straight into a fatal trap. Telling somebody their game is over is a bad business move, and I'd known that before I ever took out the first ad. So staying put until dark was a good move, one that would advance the player painlessly toward the short-term objective of reaching the city limit unharmed. There was no real danger. But the wrong move could have delayed the team until winter, scaling hospital exteriors to get at the one uncontaminated bottle of disinfectant or a snakebite kit. There was a colony of snakes in the ditch just a few hundred yards away. She might have chosen to head for the ditch instead of rest by the dumpster. So I hadn't lied. I had just played up the bright side. When Lance got home and sent in his moves, he was excited. I remember his excitement, how I could see it in the way the pencil dug into the page. I was piecing together what I knew about him while picking out clothes for the hearing. Vicki had come to help me dress. I didn't need her help. I can dress myself, but I was grateful. Sometimes I wondered what Vicki made of my work, since she never asked me about it, and I didn't usually volunteer much. Our conversations stuck mainly to simple things like food, or the weather, or how we were feeling. She told me about her family sometimes. If she found me at my work, she mostly left me to it. It was difficult that day to remain in the moment. I wanted her to know how I felt, thinking of Lance where he was now, in a place called Casa Central, some physical rehabilitation center for adolescents. Most of his fellow patients had survived more sudden traumas than his, car accidents, house fires. His problems had a better shot at total resolution, but in the immediate present, they were as bad as anybody's. He'd spent days down in a shallow pit, without food, with only forming ice to suck for water. Now he lay on a burn recovery bed all day, hoping that feeling would return to his legs from the knees down, his face salved and wrapped, everybody praying that enough attention would encourage some of the skin to grow back. As best as I can put it together, This is what I can tell you about Lance Patterson. He was born to a couple in their mid-20s who had been married for several years. His father worked the evening shift at some Winter Park assembly line that made parts for machines. His mother was a substitute in the grade schools. His family was a good family. They weren't rich, but they all lived together and stayed in one place. Of course, I only knew him through the mail, but I imagined him as an awkward boy with too much energy. His teachers liked him, and they told him so. I know this because he mentioned it once when he said that the other kids his age didn't like him, but his teachers were nice. He spent his afternoons after school hanging around the house, watching television, and keeping himself entertained. He had a few friends, all casual, but he was personally somewhat guarded. When Carrie came into his life, a corner of the world he'd only ever dreamed about was open for him. I learned about this corner of his world when he brought her into the game, which he'd only been playing for a few months. "Is it okay if I have a partner playing with me who can just start where I'm at?" he wrote. "Can we just say I found her hiding somewhere?" I didn't see why not. I couldn't write a special turn for it, but I wrote at the top of his next turn, "You have been joined by a young technician who can help you tap the aquifer." He was not unusual in sending me bits and pieces of his life. That, in part, was what contributed to my horror at the whole situation. There might have been others like him, about whom I'd never heard, people whose play had taken them into lightless hallways. What of them? They found their way out and disappeared. Or they never said anything and kept on playing. What did I know about these people, about anybody anywhere whom disaster hadn't struck? There was Chris, he was all right. But generally the only way we ever know anything about anything is if something goes wrong. Knowing this is hard for me. "This is a picture of a boy named Lance," I said to Vicki out of nowhere while she was straightening things up. "He plays that game you always see me working on." I felt like a man leaving a spaceship for the surface of a new planet. It is pretty rare for me to feel that sort of need so many seem to have, that irresistible desire to tell somebody else what they're thinking. I hadn't talked to Vicki about the lawsuit. For several reasons, I tend to keep my conversations with people limited to basic pleasant things like the weather or which kind of macaroni and cheese tastes best. "Oh," said Vicki. "Back in my own trauma ward days, I knew several social workers who could have learned a thing or two about reflective listening from Vicki." "Yeah," I said. She was making my bed for me, hospital style, tight corners and accordion folds. "He's in the hospital now, but he's been playing Trace Italian for almost 3 years. Him and his girlfriend. She died." "I'm real sorry," said Vicki, "to hear it." I could see her taking the measure of me, noticing how talkative I was today. "How's he getting by now?" "He's..." I looked for the word, and for a few seconds while I looked, I considered her question, the depths of understanding that seemed to have formed its words. How many people had she taken care of whose problems involved getting by or not getting by in so many hundreds of different degrees? "He's managing," is what I came up with. She came over and sat down beside me, getting her dressing changing things together on a tray, and she waited for me to continue. "He went a long time without food or enough clothes to keep him warm," I said. "He was in a place a long way from his home, and he didn't know how cold it got there, and by the time he figured it out, it was too late. He tried to save his girlfriend, they say, but she was trying to save him too, and she didn't make it. They liked to read the same books together, and see the same movies, and talk about them. He used to write to tell me about the things they liked to think about. I don't think he really knows how to think a few steps ahead. Young people can't think ahead," she said. She was opening up some Betadine swabs. I laughed, my little wet throat laugh. "I know," I said. "You know I know. I keep hoping he won't blame himself too much for being stupid. I mean, he is a little stupid, I think, but to me that's not a bad thing to say about a person. I'm a little stupid, but I'm all right. Lance is young and stupid, though, I guess. It's 2 strikes. Now, said Vicki. He likes to play video games, but he hasn't got any sensation in the pads of his fingers anymore, so he can't feel them pressing on the buttons, and he says it feels weird, so the games aren't as fun. The first thing he thought of when his girlfriend died was what she'd want him to do, how to keep the memory of her happy in his imagination. What a sweet kid, I said. My face stung. They met in junior high school band. She played the flute, I guess, and he was in the drum section, and they went to the movies together a lot. I wanted to give Lance a better biography, but all I really had at the ready were some bare bits and details, the parts he hadn't been able to stop himself from mentioning, the pieces of himself that flew from him naturally, like sparks from a torch. "Well, he sounds like a nice boy," said Vicki, straightening my collar for me. The sun was cresting the cypresses that lined the walkway, and a clean, warm light had filled the room. It's hard not to feel good in that kind of light. I nodded, and I looked at her, and felt such gratitude to have her around. I was happy to know her in my small, formal, dependent way. And I felt a ravenous grief for nice boys who are too stupid to take care of themselves, and too dumb to remember to check the surrounding brush for snakes before settling down to sleep for the night. I want to read one other thing that explains a little of that. The book runs backwards, so a little after that, which is to say before that, there is a hearing at which Lance's parents, Carrie's parents, have sued the narrator for creating this game that these children took out into the real world. And he has to attend a hearing to see whether there's going to be a trial. When I was a child, my mind wandered a lot, and most often it would wander to the dark places, as though drawn there by instinct. It found them again now. I saw Lance and Carrie freezing in the middle of the hard Kansas night. I imagined their hunger. I remembered skimming the autopsy report. Carrie died early. Her coat was thinner. What had it been like for Lance, lying in the dark, waiting to be next? The pit they'd dug for themselves, had it bought them some time? Or had the energy they'd wasted in digging shortened the time they'd had left? Does a person gasp like a dying old man when he's dying of cold? Or is it different? Did they see their nail beds going blue and feel panic? Or had their minds gone past the point of panic to that self-drugged state where everything looks cool? And why hadn't they gotten up and run back to the highway? No energy left? Still convinced they'd find something? Did both of them want to bolt from the scene, but neither one want to blink first? Their young, perfect bodies, wasted, squandered, covered in the end with wet grass they'd pulled into the pit from the surrounding plain, trying to put it off. Children. Children in the grip of a vision whose origins lay down within my own young dreams, in the wild freedom those dreams had represented for me in my desperation to build and destroy and rebuild, to create mazes on blank pages. I let the evidence bag rest flat on my upturned palms, as if it were some historical document of great value or interest. I looked at it, remembered a whole bunch of things from my own distant past, and then recalled the day the turn had come back to me in the mail with none of the options circled. Instead, in pencil, a fifth way, a mystery at the time, a bad punchline now. Of all the things that made me wince, this was the one that hit me hardest, because there was hope in it, determination, drive, all that youthful focus. 2 words, 1 compact phrase, handwritten in 1 script, 1 person signing for 2. Start digging. Lance and Carrie. My lawyer read my statement. I wish I could read this to you myself, instead of having somebody read it for me. It's not like I can't talk, but it is distracting to other people when I do. So I have written it down. I hope you both can understand. It would be an insult to you and to the memory of your daughter for me to spend too much time dwelling on who I am and what I am like as a person. I imagine your attorneys have explained to you how I got to be the way I am. I have no children of my own. I can't imagine what you are going through. I spent most of my teenage years in hospitals and physical therapy rehabs. It gets so lonely living inside your head. Because of my face, I could not even wear headphones for listening to music, so I invented a world in the future, and I called it the Trace Italian. It was a place where I could have adventures, and when I grew up, I wanted to share those adventures with other people. I wanted specifically to share them with people like me, but I don't know any people like me. Most people like me are dead. I don't have close personal friends, but my customers are like friends to me. I share in their lives a little. To them, I am just a company, and that is fine. I live a little through them and the small things I learn about them. It makes my own life feel much more interesting. I don't go to conventions to meet with them or personalize my business, and I don't answer personal mail. I don't want to be a creep. I am only here to provide a service. I have taken pride in that service, and my work has brought me pleasure over the years, and I never, ever thought anyone could possibly come to harm from it. If I had thought someone would get hurt because of Trace Italian, I would have shut it down. I would not even have started in the first place. Lance and Carrie played the game together and did it so well that I was amazed. I thought they were just two smart kids. Anybody would have predicted a great future for them both. I understand that you blame me, and I can't be angry about that, but I ask you to look at things my way. However different I am from normal people, in the end I am just a guy trying to do his job. Trace Italian doesn't stand for anything in the real world, and I couldn't have guessed anyone would ever think otherwise. I hardly know anything about the real world. What little I do know I got from books and movies. I did not knowingly send any young people to their deaths. I would not. I couldn't. Please understand. It is a little strange to me to be defending something that was supposed to have been a place where people could feel safe and have fun, where nothing ever really happens except inside our heads. But understand, too, that I have to defend myself and my creation that has brought pleasure to a few people over the years. The Trace is a good place. It is a place where people can go in their imaginations. That is a good thing. And while I'm sorry it went wrong for your daughter, it is not wrong by itself. By the way, and against advice of counsel, I want to say that Lance and Carrie were technically right. Of the 4 possibilities on the paper, the one that would have moved them in the direction they wanted to go was forage for roots. I don't know why I want to tell you this. I know it doesn't really help my case. I just feel like I owe it to them to let you know. They were right to start digging. But they were only right to start digging in the game, not out in the real world, not in Kansas, in actual ground. I am so sorry.